Ray Dalio, the legendary investor who founded the world's biggest hedge fund, has a really stark warning for us. He's convinced the world is on the very edge of a massive, disruptive change, and he's laid out this pretty alarming roadmap for what he sees coming. So let's get into it and break down what he's saying.
Have you had that feeling lately? You know that the world is getting more and more chaotic, prices are spiraling out of control, and the political divides just seem to be getting deeper and deeper? Well, you're not alone. And according to Dalio, what feels like chaos isn't random at all. He says it's all part of a predictable pattern that has repeated itself over and over again throughout history. Okay, so let's really dive into the heart of this. Dalio's analysis has led him to issue 3 major warnings for the coming decade. And honestly, they're pretty serious.
So first up, he is predicting a major economic crisis. He argues that after decades of racking up debt and just printing more and more money to cover it, we've basically built our economy on an unstable foundation, and he thinks it's about ready to crack.
The second prediction is a real shocker. He puts the probability of a U.S. civil war within the next 5 to 10 years at a staggering 40%.
And believe it or not, for his third prediction, he gives the exact same 40% chance to something even more chilling: a third world war breaking out in the next decade. I mean, numbers that specific and that dire, they sound extreme, right? So the big question is, how on earth did he get to them?
Well, the answer, he says, isn't in some complicated financial model. It's in history. Dalio has studied the last 500 years of empires, their rise and their fall. And he found this clear, predictable pattern that he calls the big cycle.
So what exactly is this big cycle? Well, think of it as a framework, a kind of map that describes how dominant world powers rise and fall, moving through these really distinct stages, from incredible prosperity all the way to decline.
The cycle basically unfolds in 6 stages. It all starts with a big economic boom that creates a ton of wealth. This inflates a financial bubble. But as we all know, bubbles always pop. That leads to a financial crisis and then a really painful recession. And here's the crucial link that Dalio makes: that economic pain spills over into society, and it causes this deep internal conflict, which, if it's not managed, can lead straight to that final scary stage: revolution and war.
So where does Dalio think the United States is on this map right now? Right here, smack dab in the middle of stage 5. He believes we're characterized by extreme internal conflict and are teetering right on the verge of a major, system-altering change.
All right, let's look a little closer at the warning signs of Stage 5. Dalio says it's really defined by 2 huge internal cracks: a financial crisis brewing and a crisis of social unity.
Dalio points to 3 critical red flags for any nation that's in this dangerous phase. First, it's spending way more money than it's earning, which creates just massive amounts of debt. Second, its people aren't really working together anymore. They're basically at war with each other. And third, a powerful rival nation is rising up to challenge its dominance on the world stage. So that first red flag is the debt problem. And you can think of it this way. When a country just prints tons and tons of new money to pay its bills, it's kind of like adding water to juice, It dilutes the value of every single dollar that's already out there. That's inflation. Dalio warns this can lead to something called stagflation, which is this really toxic trap where prices keep rising, but the economy stops growing. It means your money buys less, and the value of your savings just evaporates.
And this all leads to Dalio's famously blunt piece of advice for this kind of environment: cash is trash. His point is actually really simple. In a world with high inflation, any money that you're just holding on to in cash is actively losing its value, its purchasing power, every single day.
Now, that second crack is this deep internal division. In stable times, political leaders tend to try and find some common ground, to compromise. But Dalio observes that in stage 5, the centrists get pushed aside by populists on both the far left and the far right. And for them, politics isn't about compromise. It's a zero-sum battle. It's about winning at all costs. And that kind of dynamic just rips the social fabric apart.
And this isn't just some theory. Dalio points to a really chilling historical parallel. During the economic crisis of the 1930s, this exact same combination, financial pain and extreme political division, led to the collapse of democracies in Germany, Italy, Spain, and Japan. All of them fell into authoritarian dictatorships. For Dalio, the 1930s are a huge, flashing warning sign for our current time.
So, at the very same time that all of these internal problems are weakening a country from the inside, Dalio's third red flag appears on the scene: the rise of a powerful external rival.
this is actually a classic setup in Dalio's cycle. The dominant power gets totally consumed by its own internal fights, and that distraction creates a power vacuum on the world stage. And rising powers like China and Russia, they're always ready to step in and fill that void. And that creates an incredibly tense and unstable global environment.
And this risk? It's escalating fast. Dalio originally put the odds of a major US-China conflict at about 35%, but he's since updated that forecast, raising it to 40%, because, in his own words, events are moving even faster than his model predicted.
To explain the danger here, Dalio uses another really powerful historical analogy. Before World War II, the United States tried to contain Japan's expansion by hitting them with severe economic sanctions, basically cutting off their access to vital resources like oil.
But here's the thing. The sanctions didn't prevent a war, they'd provoked it. By cutting off Japan's resources, the U.S. basically backed them into a corner, and that led directly to the attack on Pearl Harbor. The lesson for Dalio is that economic warfare is still warfare, and he warns that the world is playing that same dangerous game today.
He sees the war in Ukraine as this powerful catalyst that's accelerating all of these trends. I mean, it's testing the real-world power of Western sanctions, it's pushing Russia and China into a more formal alliance, and it's forcing all the neutral countries to finally pick a side. In effect, it's hardening the lines between two competing global blocs in a way that is just eerily similar to the Axis and allies before World War II.
So when you put all these different pieces together, the financial stress, the internal division, and this external challenge, you arrive at what Dalio sees as a moment of maximum danger.
So here we are. You've got three massive, interconnected crises all converging at the exact same time. A financial crisis born of debt and inflation is fueling a domestic crisis of political polarization, and all this internal weakness is happening at the very moment the nation faces its greatest external challenge in generations. For Dalio, this isn't just one problem we're facing, it is the perfect storm.
And this brings us to the final critical question that Ray Dalio's entire analysis really forces us to confront. Is this historical cycle of rise and fall a pattern that is repeated for centuries, about to repeat itself once again?